Welcome to Thoughts for Change Makers LinkedIn Live, where we challenge the status quo, elevate performance, and foster exponential growth. Today, my guest is Dr. Sephanie Mitrano. So, she is an expert in guiding individuals, leaders, teams, and organizations through challenge of introspection. She has enabled the gentle transformation of 1,000 of people over the past 20 years. She's an author of Unmasked, Loved, and Empowered. It is a story-guided introspection notebook. So welcome. And in fact, I'm realizing that we have some issue with the LinkedIn.
Oh.
Edit and link. Okay, hopefully now we are live on LinkedIn.
I can maybe check on my account.
Because so I love experimentation for people that are watching. And just before, we tried to add Dr. Sephanie Mitrano LinkedIn as well, so we could be live on both profiles. And by doing that, we might alter things with StreamYard, the platform we are using to go live. So if you can see this live from my LinkedIn, oh yeah, we can. Yes, perfect. Thank you, Andrea.
The event, we can.
All good. So, Stephanie,
yes.
I love to ask this question, and it's a double question. So you can choose which one you want to answer, or if you want to answer both of them. So I'm obsessed, with performance, whether it's individual or team. And I like to ask the definition. So what is the definition of either individual or team performance? Or if you want to answer for both.
Yeah. I like to answer the question maybe as performance in general, and then people can take it to the level that they want. Actually, my answer would be it depends, because I really love people to choose what is their definition of performance, because they are the one doing it. So if you are a team, it depends on your culture, and it depends who you are as a team. And of course, you can go to the usual, are we achieving goals? And then hopefully you don't have just business goals and financial goals, and you have other goals like learning, innovation, growing in many different ways. But then I think performance is not just about achieving goals. Some people are more mission driven, and a mission is not about going into the future and looking at, are we going to achieve something? It's more about, are we embodying our values? Are we being who we want to be? So you have, especially in a humanitarian world, it's easy to see how they are fulfilling a mission, and that's performance to them. Yeah, and it's not about, how many people did we save? It's about, are we saving people? That's all we care about. See, but also when you say the word performance, I always think about artists as well, and I like to bring that to business and thinking more like, what experience are we creating? And it's not about, it's like, it's not about how many people have applauded at the end of the performance. It's more about, while we are performing, while we are in the flow, how are we feeling and how are we making other people feel? And I think for me, that's an interesting point to bring, that is naturally there for in the arts world. But can we bring that to the business world, I think?
Yes, I love it. I never thought about that before. I would love to see if other people like to bring their own definition in the comments too. Because that's what I like about this question. When you ask the definition of something, you will never come up with the same definition, and that's reflecting in the world that we're living right now. And especially with emotions and introspections. So that's why, I would like to know more about what made you start writing a notebook, creating this notebook that I will share while you are answering this question. Oh, yes. You can show it as well on
the real thing. Yes.
Yes.
So this is a story-guided introspection notebook. So it looks like a notebook. It is a notebook, you can write in it, but it is a book because there are stories inside. But if you ask me the origin story,
Yes.
that's beyond the features and what it is. It's really more about my own need to introspect, and this is just a tool in a way. But I think if I maybe answer your question a little bit backwards,
Please do.
and kind of go back to why introspecting, because I know you are a specialist of overthinking, and you've written your own book about overthinking. And at some point I was like thinking, are people going to think that my introspection notebook is an overthinking tool, because I'm asking people, questions, and they write their own answers, etc. And I was thinking, well, no, because to me, overthinking is when it stays in your mind and then it goes round and round and round in this many form, and it's intangible, and you can't really get hold of it, and it's making you feel not very well, if it's too much. Mm-hmm. But the introspection is about using that tool and using journaling is about bringing these thoughts down onto paper, giving them matter, giving them tangibility. And this, once it becomes matter, then they can be used, then it can be useful. Then you can look at them in a different way, then you can play with them in a more concrete way. So I think it relates a little bit to the notion of putting it into action rather than letting the overthinking go crazy. But the introspection, I think for me, what's important is, everybody introspects. I didn't invent it. It's just we do that,
Since ever, I never stop. Like I do you call it self-awareness as well? Introspection, self-awareness.
Well, yes. The more you introspect, the more you should gain in self-awareness. That's kind of the point. But the problem with introspection is it can look very daunting, like a very big thing with maybe the big questions as a humanity that we might have, in terms of, who am I, and what's my purpose in life, or, these really big questions that as humans we are facing at work and in our personal life everywhere. So introspection needs some guidance to help us do it, but in a way that we can use it and we can make it useful. Often people have big introspection at big life crisis moments, like a job loss, losing a person, a big change in their lives, an illness, something really major. And if they haven't practiced introspection, then it's like a big challenge. But if you have trained yourself and you are introspecting regularly, then, when the big changes happen, you already have like mental processes, you already know yourself. There are things that are already in place to help you maybe go through these challenges a little bit smoother, let's say. It's never easy, but a bit smoother. And I've always been very introspecting, asking myself so many questions about everything, about myself, about the world. So I've always been in there. But I found that once I started writing for myself first as a journaling, then I started gaining more self-awareness, because the paper was more like a mirror. And we were talking about self-awareness. And I think writing in the book, not this one, but in notebooks.
Yes.
Yeah, you have a picture. Yeah, so I have written in many notebooks over the years. And I have found that, yes, they are a mirror of myself. So I could just write. And then I could read again. I could kind of go, oh, what's going on really? And kind of put some structure and maybe see some patterns. And so it became more useful than just thinking in my head alone. It's like talking to someone else, but it's talking to yourself, but on paper.
Yeah, like keeping the thoughts in your head can become toxic. It's like living in a flat and never emptying your bins. Like you keep piling the bins one after the other in your flat. And do you feel it is sustainable? No. And in
Exactly.
fact, it's the same with the thoughts in our mind. And I'm sharing that with a metaphor, but lots of studies have been demonstrated that overthinking can lead to depression, stress, anxiety. So, in my opinion, as well, because I know the consequences, I've coached so many people in that area, is that overthinking is toxic for your mental health and for your physical health. And so, definitely, journaling is a way to get a perspective, like to put the thoughts on paper and to have a new perspective and to detach yourself from
Exactly.
yourself
Yeah.
in a way.
Yes, but that's exactly that. And I think when I started, it was more as it's an act of empty. You were talking about filling your flat with beans. Like I was emptying all the beans, getting them out on paper. And so there's this release that happens when you are journaling, and especially when you are. There are two things, because there are two levels of thoughts. There are the thoughts that you already know, that you think with words in your mind and you kind of hear. So if you take that and you put it on paper, that's one thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are the thoughts that are more, let's say, subconscious. So they are there, but maybe they haven't taken form yet in your mind with words. But once you start writing, and especially automatic writing, where you don't know in advance what you're going to write, you just ask yourself a question and then you start writing what comes up.
Mm.
And that's when you actually surprise yourself sometimes about, oh, yes, I am thinking that, and really seeing maybe the darkest part of yourself, or the parts that maybe you're not really don't like too much. But it's good that you see them, because then they're not kind of playing around on their own. Yeah. And that's why the prompt, and hence if I go back to the notebook, the
Mm.
question, because the book is about a story, 27 stories, but each story is something I have experienced
Mm-hmm.
myself, something I have learned or realized or gone through.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of each story, there are questions. And these questions, they serve as prompt for the reader to start this introspection. So the story guides you into maybe a context or an element, a small thing. But I can show you, maybe, I don't know if you have a picture, but so you have, like, a story is very short, it's like a few pages. So there's maybe one, like 2-3 pages, you see, two
Mm-hmm.
and a half pages, so very short. And then in these black boxes here,
Yeah.
you have
Yeah, you
questions.
can see it. Yeah.
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 So you have maybe 2-3 questions for each thing. And the question is there to help the person who wants to introspect,
Mm-hmm.
to kind of guide and say, oh, how about you? How do you feel about this story or this concept or this
Mm.
experience? Have you experienced something before like that? What is your story? How do you feel about that kind of thing? Or, so in a way, by asking the question, I trigger the introspection.
Mm.
And then it becomes useful. Then my story becomes useful, because a story sometimes, it's my story, and but but with the question, it makes the reader kind of find their way through that, and then make it valuable for them. Yeah.
Mm.
Because we need to be prompted to introspect.
Yes, because
And
otherwise, do you feel we have a tendency to ask ourselves the same questions? But by asking ourselves the same question over and over, we won't get different outcomes or outputs, or we won't grow. So by forcing us or pushing us, I'm not sure what the best word here is.
encouraging.
We like answering a better question usually leads to better outcomes. It's maybe my engineering background here that is
Mm.
talking as well.
I wouldn't say better questions, because I don't know if my questions are better than the question you
Yeah.
ask yourself.
Yes, that's right.
But it's different. And I think that's what you said earlier about, getting detached from yourself. And that's what you're meaning by getting a different result. You need to get out of your usual self. So to get out of your usual self, my story is taking you somewhere else, which is not you, but it's still relatable. And then my question is taking you back to you, but you have to write about it, so it's kind of asking you to look at yourself or look at something you've experienced with my perspective in some way. So you have to trust me that I bring some interesting perspective. But that's the whole point. And maybe if I go back to maybe not the story of the book, but why it is important maybe in business to do that, because obviously this is a book for individuals. Introspection is very solitary experience. The book makes it a bit less lonely and a bit more guided, but still it's something you do on your own. But why would we want to bring that kind of thing in business? It's because I see that with teams that often they want to reflect together, to learn, to grow, but the guides they are using are the business guides. Very efficient, driven, which is fine. Very performance. Did we achieve the goals we wanted to achieve, and what's the how did we work? So that's fine and well, but it's not enough. It's not enough, because we know that teams, they're not just robots executing a software or a algorithm or a process or whatever, automation or any kind of thing. So there are loads of variables that are really more linked to the people and their insides and their emotions and all of that. So if we don't include that kind of thinking and introspective approach, then we are missing out on a big learning for the teams. And the second thing is, we've been all talking about trust, and trust is the foundation of a team. I think Lencioni was talking about the 5 dysfunction of a team, and the big one is lack of trust. So we really need to focus on trust. But trust is a very human, individual thing, so it can't be forced. And it's linked to vulnerability. It's linked to, do I feel I can entrust myself to others? Can I open up to others? Will they hurt me? Will I take some risks? And that kind of relationship, trusting relationship, needs a level of sharing in vulnerability. And introspecting as a team is an exercise of sharing in vulnerability. It is guided, so we don't share about everything and be completely naked in front of each other, because it's a bit too much. We don't need to go that far. But still, we need to be able to open up about who we are, what we believe in, what we fear in the world, what we ambition in the company, etc. And for example, I'm working with a team, a board level, but they're quite junior as a board. They need to make big decisions as a team, strategic decision together. But if they don't trust each other, they're just going to be very political. And it might work, but it's not going to be a fully performant team. So I do loads of exercises so that they share about who they are, and as individuals, so that they can learn to trust each other and rely on each other. And then for me, the performance is also about cohesion. So, so that's that, kind of going round in the loop on this. But that's why introspection is not just it's a nice thing, the monk do it, and it's not just a spiritual practice, etc. It's a questioning of yourself that helps you, as you said earlier, bring more self-awareness. But also, this self-awareness needs to be useful. It's not just about, I know about myself, and that's it. It's more about, okay, I know who I am and how I work, how my even the things that I'm not proud of, but
what's my triggers? Like,
exactly.
Someone arriving late in meetings, I'm already triggered by this type of behavior.
Well, exactly. And that's why maybe I'll connect to the emotions, because this is where this introspection helps you understand your emotional patterns, because we all have emotions in business and at home and anywhere, just by being humans. But we haven't learned the language of our emotions. Most people, I mean, think about, if your parents not really emotionally aware or mature, then they didn't transfer that to you. If, you know, going to school, that's really not a subject that they teach you. At university, if you're lucky, maybe you'll meet me and I talk about it, but, you know, obviously I'm only one person. If maybe you go to then work in a company, maybe if you're lucky, you get some trainings about, but it's really, usually you only deal with that kind of language if you have a big problem, if you have a breakdown and you go see a shrink, and at some point you unpack all of this. But you are feeling all of these emotions throughout without being ill, without having a big crisis. You are every day kind of all of that, but you don't have the language for it. So most people, and that's what I hear in companies when I do trainings, they kind of want to get rid of it. You know, like, oh no, you know, because it's kind of a hindrance to my performance. Yeah. You know, because if I start feeling a bit angry or something, then maybe I get agitated and then I can't control myself, and then I can't be as efficient, and I can't do this, I can't do that. And so emotions are bad. And that's what I hear. And people, you know, want to get rid of it. It's like they want to get rid of part of themselves. And I think that's how I started talking about emotions when I did the TED talk, was really about bringing awareness to say, hey guys, whether you go to, you know, to work, you are still a human being. And it's not because you're in an office and you have to perform and you have, you know, to kind of be in this collective and contribute and all that. It doesn't stop you from being human, and they shouldn't stop you from being human, you know. So companies, in a way, maybe encourage you to not have emotion and to control, because the company is like it's not a real entity, it's not a human entity, it's like a thing of its own. And if it had a mind, it just want you to be robots and perform and make money and in, out, and all of that. But when you work in an organization, you are still a human being, so life will trigger you. And that's what I teach in organization. And I'm always surprised to teach something that is so natural, because we all have it. Maybe there's the slide with the little cartoon drawings with the circles. That's one very simple thing that I show. It's called the mechanics of emotions. Yeah, that one. And it looks very childish, and it's very simple, because I've simplified obviously some very complex inner workings that we have in our bodies when we are triggered with emotions, you know, with what happens in your brain and what happens in your chemistry in your body. But I've made it simple so that people will actually get the point, and get the point that you will be confronted by life all the time. Life is a source of stimuli. And you talked about trigger. But we're not triggered by life. We are stimulated. And we trigger ourselves. And when I say that, people are like, but because it is your own frame of mind, your own belief system, your own value system that transform this stimulus into a trigger. Because you know that in the same situation with the same stimulus, many people will not be triggered. So it's not the fault of the stimulus, it's more how you internalize that stimulus, what it means to you with your value system. And, you know, for you, being professional is turning up on time. So when someone is not on time, it's not professional. And there's this level of expectation of being demanding, but also because to you, professionalism is very important. And, you know, so again, so it's you who is triggered. You are triggering yourself. It's not the person being late. They're just being late. But you are triggering yourself this emotion. So it can be anger, it can be all sorts of emotion, depending on who you are. And that's very important. And I think from when I share this in organization, I help people empower themselves with their own emotional processes rather than feeling emotions are happening to them and they are victim of that and they'll just want to get rid of it. If you feel empowered and you know your emotions are triggered by you, then it starts kind of, oh, how can I navigate it? What can I do with it? And how is it working? You kind of want to, put your hands in the motor and kind of look inside and kind of go, oh, okay, how can I tinker, with that? So I'm talking to the engineer mind here. I know some engineers are on the call. I've seen some people I know. So yeah, you are triggering your own emotion. And the introspection, if I connect back to that, is helping you already kind of identify, oh, there are certain stimulus that to me become trigger. And maybe they trigger certain specific emotions because in my value system, professionalism is important, or truth is important, or whatever value you're holding. I'm not judging here. There's no good or bad values. Everyone's got their own. But it's important to understand that it's not because this is important, everybody should be professional. No, for you it's important. Own it, fine. But, don't expect that it's happening for everyone. Anyway, so this is you are triggering your own emotion. And the second thing that's important in here is to understand what is an emotion. And an emotion is just chemistry. It's really this chemical imbalance happening in your body because you have triggered it in some way. Okay? And I won't make the technical distinction between when it's triggered by your, kind of more primal brain or when it's triggered by your more thinking brain, because then it'll be too long. But, you are triggering it in some way, and it's changing you. And I love to see emotion. Your emotion is the language of your body. It's your heart might be beating faster. Your breathing changes. Your blood flow changes. Your body's changed. You are changed. And then people think, but why? Why do we need to be in that state, of excitation or, kind of really feeling hot and, angry and all of this? Why do we have that? And it's a very primal processes and it's still there. So maybe it's still useful. And that's the second shift that happens when I train about emotion, is that understanding the purpose of these emotions, why they are there, why they are changing our body in that instant, in that moment when we are triggered by something specific. And that's why I kind of put it in a very simple way. There's another slide called with a little table. It's white and black and red. Yeah, that one. So here it's really about this. It's a very simple way to get a very basic first understanding of the emotion I'm feeling. And I think this is really helping people start decoding themselves and thinking, well, when I feel anger, what's happening really? Okay, where does it come from? It comes from maybe an evaluation. So in my value system, I've been triggered and I believe this is unfair, this is unjust, this shouldn't be there. It's an obstacle to my desire. I deserve it. I shouldn't be, the should and all of that. You hear that. That's the evaluation you have in your mind. And that's the trigger. Yeah. Thinking these thoughts is triggering the emotion. So I'm triggering anger. And anger, if most people feel hot when they're angry, the energy is rising. Maybe the hands want to move up. The throat, expands. We might speak louder. There's this kind of really powerful thing going upwards, like a volcano wants to explode. Yeah. Well, some people have learned to kind of put a lid on the volcano, and it's like a cocotte minutin, like a fresh cooker. But initially, it's more like a volcano. And And you think, well, why do we have that? What's the point of feeling like a volcano? You know, because it's very dangerous, a volcano. It's very destructive and all of that. And people, you know, say really mean things, and maybe they physically hit people. And so really, you know, why do we want anger, you know, to be part of our emotional life? And actually, you need to understand that anger gives you power, perseverance, motivation to act. And if you want to change the injustice, to overcome the obstacle, to kind of, you know, remember this anger comes from this trigger, that there's something that is wrong here. Well, anger is giving you all that energy, and physically, mentally, you know, kind of gives you all of that to be able to deal with that situation, to push back, to get people on board, to create a big leadership speech that will get all of these followers who will help you change the world. That's what anger is when it's rightly channeled, when you manage to harness the power of that volcano, yeah, then it transforms into superb action, passionate movements. Yeah, this is all I can say. And for me, it was the emotion I had the most trouble with for a long time, because especially for women, I say that for women because I do teach a lot of women about that. And I know that anger is not an emotion that we have been taught to express, because it's very masculine, it's very powerful and strong. So it hasn't been, let's say, encouraged in girls, unfortunately. So we haven't trained or known how to express it in a useful way. But if you understand that this emotion is not bad, it's not aggression, the behavior might be aggressive, violent, but the emotion itself can be very useful if rightly channeled into a behavior that is constructive. So if your anger about this late person at a meeting, if you manage to, in a very poised, grounded way, to communicate that, you know, it is important for you to be professional, that respecting each other's time is a strong value, and, you know, and then you really kind of be with that, people will understand. And, you know, because if you don't channel it, it might either you implode because you don't say anything, but, you know, kind of imploding on the inside, or it might be a burst out of, you know, oh, you're always late, you know, kind of, you know, or some passive aggressive comments, or any way unproductive, let's say, that this anger might come out. Yeah. So, yeah, introspection helps you understand your triggers, helps you understand your emotions. And if you decode yourself, then you can recode. So now I'm talking to the programmers and developers here. Our brain is like a big software, you know, a big kind of computer, if you want. And we have been programmed. Okay, you have been programmed. Yes, we have. You know, our parents, our educators, they have shared with us some beliefs about the world, some values, some life lessons, and we can take all of that in. But we are not just our history and our ancestors. We are our own person. So we can learn from that, the previous programmings. Let's kind of take it in. But then we can still choose what's the next programming, you know, upgrades and do different, because A, the world is changing, and B, we are who we are, individuals, we are not our parents. We learn from them, but we are not them. So again, that's this kind of idea of reprogramming ourselves. And that can be done at any age. So don't have people saying, oh, but now I'm old, and, you know, you can't teach old monkeys, you know, new tricks, or something like old dogs, new tricks. In
No,
French,
I think it's monkeys.
monkeys?
I'm not sure I can be helpful in that one, because I'm always mixing this.
One is in English, one is monkeys, one is dog. But anyway, this idea of when you're old, you can't learn anymore. And that's not true. And that's not true for two reasons. Is one, we can learn at any age. You know, you have people who, the moment you stay open, you open to other perspectives, you can continue to learn. And two, even the neuroscientists have proven that there is neuroplasticity, so our brain is able to, regrow. We don't have like a set. I think there was that was an old belief that we need to reprogram. There's this old belief that we had a certain set of neurons, like when you're a kid, you grow, your brain grows, and then you get to a peak where you have your set kind of brain, and then it's going downhill from there, and that's not true. That's really not true.
And I like to just add a metaphor on so you can have a drink. So it's like, for let's talk not anymore to the developers of developer, only as well if you're a skier, like if you go in the mountains, like, when you have like soft snow and you're the first one to go through it, you make a track. And that's kind of the neuroplasticity as well in the brain. Like, you are doing it once, but if you go back up and you do it again, you just imprint more and more this path in your brain. And as like the snow is becoming more and more firm, so it's easier and smoother as well to go through.
Exactly. And that's a key competency that we have as humans. That can be also our downfall, because we think that the old, piste slopes that we have gone before are the only ones we can go through. And that's the thing about changing habits, is that, and that includes how we feel about things. We think, well, that's the way I am. I feel like this all the time when this happens. And then there's this kind of giving up and being a victim of my own programming and saying, well, that's it. And I'm not saying that you need to change completely and you will not feel these emotions or whatever. But it is more about, do you want to be slightly different with that when that emotion happens? Because it will happen. Do you want to be in your automatic kind of response, like you used to for a long time? Or do you envision that maybe it could be different? Maybe you'd like to respond in a slightly different way. And I know that for many clients, it's like, well, before presenting in front of an audience, before, I don't know, a negotiation. So things that is going to happen. And usually, you feel a certain way and anxiety comes up and et cetera, et cetera. And once you start introspecting, of course, there are always tools. But how do you choose the right tools for you?
Experimentation.
Exactly. But experiment also on specific areas, because there are many tools, so you can't experiment on all of the tools. So the work on self-awareness helps you kind of go, well, my anxiety is linked to maybe the power difference between me and the person I'm presenting to. Or maybe my anxiety is linked to my self-confidence about my appearance. Or because it can be so many things. But if you don't pinpoint where this emotion comes from, you can pick up a tool and try it. And
go for your luck. Yeah.
Exactly. So again, this kind of knowing yourself will help you pick tools that are more relevant and really work on the things that would be useful for you.
I love that. I love that aspect, because I feel that, people sometimes they fall into, when you say victimhood, especially, with, in fact, introspection or self-awareness, like some personality tests you can see out there. And then they do it once, and then they believe that this is how they should behave out in the world. But just mentioning out there, like, psychologists demonstrated that there is low test reliability. So if you do the same test 6 months later, 1 year, you might not even have the same results. And those tests out there are not to put people into boxes, but just to raise awareness. And in fact, they are helping with questions, with introspections.
Exactly.
You ask yourself questions about, am I? And that's it. So in fact, those tests are introspection tools. and not necessarily tools to put people into boxes and then to say, okay, in our team we have like influencer, like dominant style or whatever, and that is it, that's set in stone, and that's not evolving.
Exactly. But that's the whole thing is, and that's why I don't like personality tests that much, because they tend to say this is how you are. But I like behavior tests, because they're more like, hey, this is how you respond in that kind of situation.
Correct.
You know, the ones that say, oh, when you are under stress, or when you are, you know, this, or at work and at home, you know, and that is so much more flexible. And you know, it's behavior. So behaviors can be changed. Personality, you're like, well, can't change that. But behavior, you can. And it's more empowering to say, hey, okay, I understand that I have a range of behavior possible in these situations. For now, I'm more naturally by default going in that way, but it's not always the most useful. So how can I stretch myself and kind of learn new ways of doing things? And that's the learning, that's the growing. And that's not about changing my personality. It's about still being yourself, being authentic, you know, within who you are and what you want to embody in this world, but kind of adapting your behavior so that, you know, you are performing efficient, or it's working for you, let's say.
Yeah, living at your full potential.
Exactly.
And I was wondering as well if we can go into, you know, sometimes what I experienced in the workplace and what I can still see is that people will show their emotions, but other people around them don't know how to really respond to that. And that's shutting down everyone. Like, do you see what I mean? Like this type of situation, maybe where someone is crying in front of everyone in the office. And then, you know, it's, you add some shame, some guilt, and some weakness, and people don't know what to do.
Well, again, the more people accept their own emotion, the more they'll be able to accept the more they accept their humanity and their emotion, the more they will be able to accept that in others. Already. And when I say accept, I mean welcome. When I say welcome, I also mean just being there. It doesn't mean you have to solve the other person. You know, oh, she's crying, you know, oh, let's give her a hug. No, it's more about, okay, what's going on? And that's why the universal emotion translator that I've given, you know, with the little, for each emotion, you have some kind of guidance of what it means. It helps also people understand that, oh, if she's sad, oh, she needs support. How can I be of support? So then I will ask maybe better questions, or I will be maybe more present with the emotion of the other. If I understand, okay, so maybe that's what she needs. Maybe I'll ask, okay, what do you need from me in that moment? What can I do? And that's it, you know, but I welcome this emotion. It has the right to be there. Maybe we'll help this person go through it, because it is going to peak, you know, emotions, they're waves. And so it's going to go up, there's going to be a peak, it's going to come down. How can I help you get over that peak?
How can I help you to surf the wave for my Australian mate?
Yes, exactly. But that's what it is. The wave will subside if we give it some time, but also maybe it needs a bit of help and support. I see that.
Yeah.
Wondering
I like it. Like,
a question.
sorry. Yeah. By the way, if you have any questions, please pop them into the comments. We would love to see them. And you know, if people like to have processes out there, so first it's acknowledge the wave, and then surf the wave together by being curious and asking questions like, how can I help? Maybe it's just by listening is just a way to help.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And also when someone gets angry, that's a bit scary, because especially men, I'll say that to the men, when you get angry, you have the right to be angry. That's okay. But because sometimes you are men, you might be, you know, bigger in size, etc. It might look very scary. You don't mean to be scary, but it's just like the volcano is exploding. And when you are close to the volcano, it's like really scary. So what I'm saying to others also who are witnessing that is to kind of understand that something is wrong for that person, that they think something is, they really believe something is wrong. and that, you know, they want something to change. So maybe you can ask questions about what, you know, what is it that is, you know, you perceive as wrong? What needs to change for you? What would make it, you know, a more acceptable solution? Or, you know, question it so that the person who is in that anger, at least they feel heard. Because if they don't feel heard, the volcano is getting higher in intensity. So again, these are things for people witnessing emotion. Understand that this person is going through something. There's nothing wrong with that. Let's kind of support each other through that process. And thank you. I saw the comment, I think, from Martha.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
And
these are all available as videos. These two slides, they are actually more detailed, and they are videos. If you haven't seen them, they are available on YouTube somewhere, or on my website. I can share the link, or I don't remember if you have the link, Lison, but
no, I don't have, but you can add them in the LinkedIn Live comments.
later,
Yeah,
yeah.
you can. Yeah.
Cool.
Okay, and how do you see, like, not too sure if it's a challenging question, but I'm gonna, ask it. How do you see, like, the technology AI coming into the workplace and people, like humans? How if we look at maybe, yeah, how do you see that
Ooh,
mix?
that's a big question. I could ask you the question back. Say, how does it trigger you?
By doing a LinkedIn Live to remind people, so I'm going to answer the question.
Yes.
By doing a LinkedIn Live to remind people that behind books, you have people that are writing books. Behind blogs, you have people that are taking maybe one day to write a blog. And that behind LinkedIn profile, you have humans. That have emotions, and so that's something. That's why I'm doing those LinkedIn lives, to remind people that behind those LinkedIn profiles we have real humans,
Yeah.
and to let's not forget that we have beautiful minds out there like you.
Oh, thank you. But yeah, I think that's why we have art and culture and all of these elements. But even AI can create art. Actually, I'm not closed to this notion. I just want to make sure that, yeah, we don't lose our humanity in the process. That we, you know, keep AI as an extension of us, as helping us solve other problems, you know, that our mind may be limited to solve. Or, you know, like we use computers at some point, the first, you know, ones, you know, that helped us calculate more. And then AI is bringing another kind of dimension to that. But I think I totally understand especially the creative aspect of us and our creative expression in this world. Yeah, let's not forget that. But that's also because, remember, you know, masks here.
Yeah, tell us more about masks.
Yeah. Well, when we live in society, because we want to fit in, we want to belong, etc., the human has a tendency to wear masks, which kind of hides our true self. And then we kind of we don't know, you know, do they love me because of my mask? Do I need to continue wearing that mask, or do they love me for me? And all of these kind of relationship issues. But then the more I worked with masks, the more I saw them as facets of ourselves. And I think it's like if you look at a diamond, you cannot see a diamond all at once. You will only see,
Yeah, you go.
facets, you know. And looking at one facet doesn't mean the rest doesn't exist, but it means also that the one facet is not the whole diamond. So again, when you see that, that's why now the unmasking is only about taking off the masks that really don't fit anymore. You know, that you're wearing by obligation, that you're really wearing and it makes you smaller, doesn't make you feel good about yourself. The other masks might just be more facets of you that you show in different contexts, etc. But if you are more aware of, hey, I'm wearing, you know, like in this context, I'm more like this because that's how I relax. And then they see this aspect of me. And then in this context, I show more about that because they're interested in it. So always be authentic, even though it's only one facet, one part of you. And that's the thing. And sometimes we only wearing one mask because we think that's the one we should be wearing or that is expecting of be wearing, etc. And I think it's more about multifaceted and in mindfulness and being aware that that's what we are doing. I think in a very short way. It's a big subject.
Yeah, and are you still here? Yes. So let me bring a question from Ashraf. So he say, thank you, very valuable insight. And the question is about what's the difference between feeling versus emotions?
Okay, I'm not a linguist, so I will not go specifically on the definitions. To me, I really always stick with the word emotions just because it's the one, let's say, in the medical profession or in, that is used. I think feelings is probably a bit more vague, let's say, or has more... because sometimes also in language, when we say, oh, I feel that you are thinking this. Now, it's not an emotion, it's more a thought, but it's a thought that is kind of more coming from intuition. So you see then, feelings in that way it can touch on loads of different aspects. Emotion is emotion. We can talk about chemistry, we can talk about, but feelings, it's a lot more than just emotion, I think. Yeah. Because if I say, how do you feel? Some people will answer with an emotion. Some people will answer with a thought. Some people will answer with a sensation as well. Because
Correct.
when you say feeling, there's also the senses that can be involved. So that's why feeling is big, vaguer, or encompassing all of that, I think. Hope that answers.
Yeah, hopefully we answer your question, Ashraf. And if you have more, please bring them on. And now you talk about the fact that you are coaching like teams of boards. What do you see as a recurring pattern or behavior that is kind of sticking out there, and that is not unique to each team but kind of spread?
I think a big thing is about board team, the relationship. I mean, a board is a team.
Yes.
So,
of course,
and they, okay, maybe the stakes might be higher because they are making more strategic decisions and their impact is, on the whole company and has a big impact depending on the size of the company, So, so they might have more weight on their shoulders in that way. But the same problem is, how do they behave in the team dynamics? Do they trust each other? Are they cohesive? How do they make decision as a team? So this, in a way, the same issues that you find in a normal team, a non-board team,
any team, in fact.
You will find there. And yes, of course, we can talk about strategy. We can talk about all sorts of other things that are happening for board, and depending on how the board is composed, like internal, external. I mean, there are all sorts of variables we look at. But regardless of all of that, deep down, is this really a team? And in many boards, it's not, because ego gets, the higher you get, there might be some status, ego, because of the pressure. When you are under stress or under pressure, you're not behaving in the most of your highest potential.
Yes.
So if the board is under more pressure than any other team, are they behaving at their highest potential for the highest good of the organization? And maybe not. Sorry.
And poor decision making, I can add.
Exactly. Sorry, board.
Yes, but that's it. I see that as well. So, and poor decision making is a disaster for everyone.
Yeah.
Because like decision making is based as well on what are your emotions and how can you manage your emotion, and have you learned about how to think, how to make decisions at an individual level and at a collective level. That's an art.
Yeah.
And
Big
and
subject.
yes. Anyway, so yeah, we've been doing a lot, I guess. Would you like to add something to the people that are watching this LinkedIn Live? So usually it is designed for people that are the willingness to change, for themselves, for others, and not only to talk about it, but as well to act about it. So that's why it's like change makers, because they are doing things, they are making things happening.
Yeah.
So for those people out there that are watching, any piece of advice, quote, poem, whatever you want to leave them with, or questions, like a question that they can reflect upon.
First, I would say well done. Because the first, yeah, the most difficult part of the action is the actual moving it from I have an idea, I would like to I am willing and I'm going to put attention and energy into it. That first small step, however small it is the biggest one, I think. And I think we can tap us on the shoulder and kind of give ourselves some encouragement, because it takes courage, and courage comes from the heart. Yeah, and emotions drive that. So okay, my piece of advice, okay, to link back to to everything, your emotions, use them as your driver for your next actions. So if you're feeling angry about something, act, go change the something. If you're feeling sad, go get support. If you're feeling scared, go find safety. If you're feeling, just use your emotion as drivers for your actions. Act in coherence with your emotion, or at least listen to your emotions so that they can give you some messages. Even fear, sometimes like, oh, don't listen to fear because it will stop you. Listen to fear because it might still point out some risks that are. I'm not saying just follow fear and don't do anything. I'm just saying hear the guidance. Hear like if it was a mentor who was going to point out, like say, hey, in what you want to do, there are some risks. I can see some potential dangers. Can you please look into it? Look into it, and then move on. Then still do the action. And then there's this famous book called Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. Susan Jeffers, something like that. I think, yes, but it means still feel the fear. You're still listening.
Yeah. Fear will never disappear. It will always be within us.
And it's
We just
healthy.
need to get better at managing our fears.
I don't say managing our fears. I say no, but I'm like,
I know. I like it. That's
I
good.
would say befriend your fear.
Befriend your fear.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because otherwise it's a fight you cannot win. Or it's going to be a big fight.
Yeah, but when I use managing, I was not like into control your fear. It's just, like massaging your fear.
Oh yeah, friends do that. So yeah, it's good. I'll agree to that.
Thank you. I pass it. And so how can we find more of your work? How can we find you if we want to follow what you are doing? And I guess add you on LinkedIn.
Yeah, LinkedIn is where I am present, let's say on social media. I'm not present on other platforms. And I do have a new website called Unmasked.Life. Again, I can put that in the link, but it's simple, Unmasked.Life. Okay, so I hope you can remember that. And there I share every week, every Friday, I share an introspection prompt. So not the book, it's more what comes during the week, something that triggers me, that I find interesting, and then I offer some questions so that you can reflect over the weekend if you wish. You can just subscribe for free, so you'll get the prompt every week in your mailbox, or you can find also on LinkedIn, but the mailbox is easier because on LinkedIn it gets drowned in terms of content. So
yes.
Yeah, that's and you can buy the book on the website as well.
Yes.
We ship internationally, so there you
Okay.
go. Yeah, but that's the only place you can buy the book for now,
Hmm.
on the website.
Wonderful. It was a pleasure to have you, Stephanie, for this LinkedIn Live. Hopefully, people that are been watching it will get something out of it and apply it. So you can add more comments even at the end of the live. You can share it to people that you feel could be valuable for them
Great.
to have a bit of a listen. And thank you again, and continue to make a dent out there in this world. Bye for now.
Thank you, Lison. Bye.
Bye bye.